Check. Check. Can you can we all settle down? I request everyone to turn their phones on silent. So, good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to all of you. If you're wondering why I'm turning my back against you, it's the vision of our ambassador. So, first, let me start welcoming each and every one of you for coming to this event, accepting our invite, representing each of your sectors. So, first of all, I would like to start thanking the Honorable His Excellency Ambassador of India to Oman for his long wisdom and vision and in inviting us and giving us this opportunity. In fact, our aim was just to have a small gathering of a few hundred people in the physical format. But the ambassador insisted you should show the entire world that we are discussing something very important in trade today. So, pardon me for turning my back on you. This is going to be a very interactive session. And first, let's explain who we are. Uh, I'm Sharan Shahir. I'm a lawyer and I am a partner of MTS Legal Law Firm. I am accompanied by two of my colleagues, Angelina and Shweta. Today, our aim is to break down the trade agreement between India and Oman, which is the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. So, we'll try our best. As lawyers, our analogy is different from a management consultant. I hope you all understand that. So, coming back to the history of how CEPA was formed, its history of trade between India and Oman is over 5,000 years. As you all know, traders from the Malabar coast in India and traders from the coast of Oman were trading in spices, fragrances for over 5,000 years. But however, this transformed into diplomatic relationships only over the last 70 years. But this diplomatic relationship is very cordial and respectful. In 2023, it was the visit of His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq to India, which transformed the entire future of this trade. In 2023, he started the groundwork for creation of a holistic approach to the trade between India and Oman. And this visit in 2023 was reciprocated by the visit of our Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji to Oman. That is when CEPA was officially signed. During this year, 23 and 25, these are very vital years because there was a groundwork laid, and 25 was almost the execution of the agreement. So, what is CEPA? I'm sure some of you would have attended more than 2, 3 seminars on this, but let's explain how we see CEPA. CEPA is a 1,259 page dossier, a monumental document with over 16 chapters. How each of this is relevant to each of you, is going to be different. And our attempt is to not read out the dossier to you, but to decode it in simple terms. So, what is CEPA created? CEPA has created an India Oman trade corridor. And this is not a normal trade corridor for bilateral relationships. It is a breathing live one, exchanging knowledge, information, goods, everything. The significance of why I say it's a corridor and not a door is because there is a two-way entrance for it. You're not stuck outside it or inside it. It is a long corridor and you can figure out where you stand in it. So today, there's another significance also to CEPA. CEPA comes at this juncture where India and Oman both have their visions. India is running to their vision of Vikasit Bharat 2047, which is a developed country by 2047, which is the year of our centenary year of independence. And Oman is marching towards its economic discipline by Oman Vision 2040. So CEPA comes at this juncture where both the countries are marching towards each of their visions. So today, my colleagues Shweta and Angelina will both help you with a lot of illustrations and explanations as to how SEPA has transformed things from how things were before and how things are today. So this, more than how you get out of this hall informed, we want you to be inspired. That is our aim. On a closing note, SEPA is not an agreement between two countries, it's between individuals, people to people. So the purpose of this agreement is for benefit of businesses. So now I request my colleague Angelina to come and give you a brief insight with a lot more illustrious examples of SEPA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharan. Now, let me tell you a story which begins not in the year 2025, not in 2023, but 5,000 years ago. A merchant stands on the coast of what we call modern day Gujarat with his cargo of black pepper, cardamom, teakwood for setting sail at the port of Kalhat in Oman. Nothing in his hand but trust in the winds that his cargo will reach the destination. At that time, he did not have a shipping manifest or an EIC certificate or a certificate of origin. What he had was trust in the winds. But fast forward 5,000 years, what we have now between India and Oman is the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, CEPA. Stories don't write themselves together. Simultaneously, when it comes to CEPA, it took 2 years of negotiations, of chapter to chapter, clause by clause. It starts from the state visit of His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq in the year 2023, followed by the state visit of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji in 2020, which resulted in the culmination of CEPA. Now, when CEPA was being signed, there were other MOUs on cooperation partnership also being signed, some of it being on higher education, maritime, millet program exchange. And it also marked the 70 years of diplomatic relationship between these two great nations. Now, before I go further, let me ask the enlightened audience here. When we talk about free trade agreement, what is something that comes to our mind? It is obviously one of the factors are reduction in import duty, percentages on spreadsheet. But SEPA isn't just what SEPA has to offer. This is the only thing that is being taken in tonight's event. I'm sorry. There is a lot in SEPA to offer. Now, let's take an example. We're driving from Kochi to Muscat, metaphorically, obviously. Now, between this drive, we have to pass through multiple toll gates. There would be several documentation process. Now, what happens when SEPA comes into play? When SEPA comes into play, this multiple documentation process becomes a single window. Now, with respect to the single window, we see the submission of documentation instead of being given to multiple agency, single agency takes over. Now, coming to, I see here amongst the attendees, there are people representing various sectors, 12 sectors to be exact. Now, for the benefit of the addressee, we would like to take some illustrations from the industry. Now, I see some of our friends from jewelry. Now, let's take an example. If a manufacturer or a retailer of jewelry in Oman wants to import polished diamonds from India, from the suppliers, say from Jaipur. In before CEPA regime, what used to happen? Say for mathematical purposes, consignment of 100,000 OMR polished diamond would have attracted 5% of tax under the most favorable nation duty. Now, for that 100,000 OMR, this would have costed a tax levy of 5,000 per shipment. Annually, if there were 12 shipments to happen, it would have costed 60,000 OMR on import duties. Now, what happens after the implementation of CEPA? With the coming of CEPA, we are doing away with this 5% of import duty. Now, I also see a lot of faces from various hypermarkets, FMCGs, people representing FMCGs. Now, FMCG is also a sector which has a lot to gain from the implementation of CEPA, especially with respect to the importation of variety of products such as meat products, eggs, sweet biscuits, honey, etc. from India. Now, let's take another example from the FMCG sector. Say a retailer wants to procure goods worth USD $800,000. Now, each shipment of $800,000 under previous regime, under the most favored nation tariff taxation regime, would have costed a levying of 40,000, which is 5% of $800,000. Now, for yearly procurement, say if we are procuring 12 such shipments, it would have resulted in levying of $480,000. Now, after the implementation of CEPA, when we are sourcing products with origin in India, this tax is done away with, meaning duty-free products. Now, another example which I would like to take is with respect to spices. Now, when it comes to spices, India has been well known for its spice products, spice blends, for say black pepper, cardamom, cumin. Now, let's take another example when it comes to spices. Now, before SEPA regime, say if a retailer wanted to import spice blends from India, the importation of such spice blends would have taken over 5% levying on those procurement. Additionally, for each packaging of such spice blends, say your plastic packaging or tetra packaging, again would have resulted additional 5% tax. Now, this would have resulted a double layer of taxation. Now, what happens when SEPA comes into play? With the implementation of SEPA, the 5% tax on spices and spice blends is done away with. Additionally, if the retailer procures the packaging material from India, it also leads to doing away with 5% provided the packaging is sourced from India. Now, I also see a lot many faces from construction. When it comes to construction businesses and real estate, the bidder with the lowest bid wins the game. Is the survival of the fittest? And how does one examine the bid capacity? There are a lot of constants and variables When it comes to these factors, one of the factors, if I may address, is the procurement of raw materials. Now, for mathematical purposes, let's take an illustration with a firm getting a contract of OMR 12 million. Now, for that, there has to be a procurement for, say, 800 metric ton of steel. Now, in such case, before the CEPA regime, a 5% tax would have been levied under the most favored nation taxation system. Now, after CEPA, what happens? After CEPA, the 5% of tax is being done away with, which results in higher profit margin and also determining a factor for lowering the bid capacity. Now, moving forward, we have textiles. So India is also a variety of it sells variety of textiles. We have so many indigenous textiles like the Jaipuri cotton, Kanchipuram silks. Now, what does SEPA has for textiles? It is also one of the many products listed in the Harmonized System series under Chapter 1 to 97. So the products, these textile products sourced from India also get the benefit of zero tax on importation. Now, let's also take another example of what happens when we import HDPE and LLDP granules from, say, Indian petrochemical producers for pipe and fitting manufacturing. Now, earlier it would have there would be a levying of 5% tax for importation. Now, after the implementation of SEPA, this 5% tax would be done away with. Now, I have been addressing a lot of industry, especially when it comes to Indian based products. Now, it's only fair to also address industry based in Oman. As my colleague Mr. Sharon had addressed earlier, SEPA is not just a road, it's a corridor. And SEPA understands the mutual recognition of benefits between the two countries. Now, let's take an example of a well known Omani product. Ream batteries, if I may. Now, when it comes to Ream batteries, say if the production of Ream batteries is done in Oman itself, but what happens, say, if the accessories sold with Ream batteries are produced in a third country? Now, as I had explained earlier, when the origin of the product is in either Oman or India, it gets the benefit of taxation under SEPA. But what if certain accessories which has to be sold with the product are sourced from elsewhere? Now, SEPA clearly distinguishes what which products and what type of categories can get the benefit. Now, when it comes to this, the example of the battery, if the battery is produced in Oman and the accessories is produced in third country, if the accessories are sold together with the same invoice, then it also gets the benefit under SEPA. Now, sorry for the disturbance. Now, coming to another industry, which is tiles. Now, tiles also has taken a seat when it comes to being one of the beneficiary of SEPA, especially when it comes to indigenous tiles like our Atakuri tile, terrazzo. It also is, and here I also want to emphasize this fact that India is one of the exporters of tiles to Oman. So the tile industry also has a great advantage over the implementation of SEPA. Now, healthcare procurement. Now, if I may boast a little bit of India's healthcare industry, India is one of the leading examples of a good manufacturing and equipment when it comes to healthcare. And when it comes to the implementation of CEPA, the healthcare industry also has a lot of advantage. Now, the imports with respect to the first aid kits, healthcare equipments, machinery, for which an earlier 5% tax was being levied under the most favored nation, would now be down to zero, making it duty free under the CEPA regime. Now, take another well-known example of Omani domestic product, which is Bahar detergent. Now, what does Omani product has the benefit after the implementation of CEPA? Now, the implementation of CEPA makes the Omani domestic product more competitive in the Indian market with the reduction in taxation. Now, the 1.4 billion consumer market, if it's open to other producers with favorable taxation regime, it makes the market more viable for the products to be sold. Now, let's take the example illustration of Bahar. Now, India, as I told, has a population running in billions. Now, with respect to Bahar, if even a state is open for competition with domestic products, say Kerala, a city in Kerala, say Kochi, with a population of 5 million people. Now, this itself would create a competitive advantage when such market is being opened for an Omani product. Now, let's take another example of another well-known brand, which is Omani Cables. Now, over the years, with stringent policies over the standards to be procured for respect to Omani cables, it has become one of the leading cables in Oman. Now, with the coming of CEPA and the reduction of taxation, Omani cable is also one of the industry which is to benefit with opening of more competitive market in India. Same with respect to petrochemical. Now, with respect to the Indian consumer base, we see the number of automobile usage increasing day by day with the increase in population. Also, we have other benefits for entering the consumer market with respect to the petrochemical industry. Again, when it comes to spice trade with respect to pepper, cardamom, turmeric, cumin, coriander, and other spice blends, the importation of Indian products with the pro-CEPA regime, we see the reduction in tariff. Now, there is a delicacy enjoyed in India as well as in Oman, which is the Omani kingfish. Now, even before the implementation of CEPA, it was a delicacy that was being widely relished. Now, what happens after the implementation of CEPA? Now, this Omani fish becomes more competitive with its counterparts in other sea fishes. With this, I end my segment and I invite my colleague, Mr. Sharon, to shed some light about the key provisions of CEPA and how it is to be benefited. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Angelina. I think that was very elaborate and very illustrious. I'm sure it doesn't leave any room for doubt. Of course, with the paucity of time, we had to make our examples very short. Now, going to how holistic or in depth this agreement is, I'm just going to examine only these 6 chapters of CEPA. There are a total of 16 chapters in CEPA, but these 6 chapters to show that how in depth the creators of this agreement or this partnership has gone into to consider every aspect of trade. So first, let's take in the general definitions, there is goods defined. So goods has been widely defined. including in the goods which are included in chapters 1 to 97 of the harmonious system. Why this is relevant to each of you is, what is the rules of origin, what is the country of origin. All this can only be clarified, which good is entitled to exemption. All this can only be understood if there is a clarity in the definition. And I think SEPA does a very good job in going in clarity. In earlier agreements, or there would have always been an ambiguity, which this good is attracts SEPA, this good and is entitled to benefit. Now the definition gives you a clear picture where you are entitled to exemption. Now, the most important question, which is definitely there in each and every one of your mind: when is the tariff elimination going to be effective? I'm sure that's there in your mind. So, SEPA has taken one chapter to just explain that it is going to have a phased tariff elimination for certain products, and a lot of products are going to have tariff elimination from the date of signing. So, say for example, now I think there are my friends from jewelry, food, textiles, engineering goods, and plastics. These goods would be entitled to the duty exemption from the date of signing of the agreement. So, these goods will get immediately. The other goods, there is a clear timetable of phased duty elimination, say 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years. So SEPA has gone where the makers have gone in really depth, taking care of both the domestic markets here as well as there, because an exemption for every good will, destabilize the market and create unfair competition. So phased elimination is also a very integral part of SEPA. So that advanced as SEPA is. Now, going to another thing, uh, policy rationale behind SEPA is only going to reward genuine economic activity between India and Oman. So, what I want to address is packaging rules. Of course, when a duty exemption or a benefit like this comes into picture, there will definitely be elements who try to take the benefit by repackaging or relabeling. SEPA does not appreciate such practices, and the rules of origin will come into play and will quickly identify such repackaging and relabeling. Now, if I take the example of a vendor in Mumbai who imports spices from another country, I wouldn't name the country, and repackages them as an Indian spices brand and exports it to Oman. There, the Indian brand would not get any benefits of SEPA because there is no country of origin clearly defined. SEPA does not accept such unclear rules of origin procedures by exporters. So only if you are very clear to the agreement will also take care of you. Now, one important aspect of SEPA, which I think is a game changer, is the pharma industry. What SEPA has done to the pharma industry. Pharmaceutical procurement has been fast tracked. Very important aspect is certain foreign recognitions like US FDA, EMA, UK MHRA, EGA Australia. These are foreign accreditations. Now, what SEPA has done is to ensure that the benefit is available to patients and Omani common people, because of course India may be a larger pharma exporter when you take both the countries. So, taking into consideration, this agreement has made a very very vital aspect of doing away with further accreditations. If there is an accreditation from one country, that would suffice. So this has made expedited market authorization in Oman without fresh inspection of any manufacturing facility. And one more aspect is the 90-day marketing authorization timeline for certain other eligible products. And another this thing is the last nail in the coffin is the 270 working day structured timeline. So SEPA said that for pharma products which are of critical nature, which require factory inspections, not beyond 270 days. I mean, of course, you'll all be thinking we've heard structures and days like that, but SEPA is backing it with a lot of other aspects, not just the implementation. There is also a post-market surveillance aspect also, which is taken care of by CEPA. CEPA also is giving recognitions to uh, agencies which recognize good manufacturing practices, good clinical practices. These good manufacturing practices and GCP certificates from any of the one nation would suffice for you to get your product here. So it's not required for double accreditation and double this thing. This, of course, saves time, and your product is in the market even before the other hurdles are there. Now, other than this, when I told you about post-market surveillance, so SEPA is taken care of not just pushing the product into a country, especially an industry like pharma. What is most important is to know the feedback of how the product is running. So SEPA has gone into explaining that this is a two-way channel. Once a good is pushed there, you have to, there should be an adverse event data, recall notifications, and regulatory action information. These have to be shared after the good is pushed. So we do not only just push the good here, we also ensure that what happens post market surveillance is also shared. This is required as per the agreement. I think this is a very landmark move what SEPA has brought in. Now now regarding another aspect SEPA has gone into detail is creation of a competent authority for recognition of sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Of course, I also asked the first time I read SEPA, what is sanitary and phytosanitary measures? It's nothing. Sanitary and phytosanitary measures are food safety, animal health, and health compliance. This is for food products mainly. So SEPA has now said that with the coming into effect of SEPA, you do not need accreditation from two countries. If you have a certification from India, say, for example, from the Export Inspection Council or the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, FSSAI, you do not need a further re-accreditation in Oman. So, with the coming into effect of SEPA, your regulatory compliance will reduce drastically. This is very important for people in the hypermarket space and other industry, because this testing takes a lot of time and the regulatory compliances of both are quite different. So that timeline is totally reduced with the coming of this body. So now there would not be a requirement of parallel testing in an Omani laboratory or a parallel testing in an Indian laboratory. If it is from an accredited laboratory or a registered authority in one country, the same would not have to be retested in the other country. So, coming to another aspect which my colleague Angelina already addressed, which is regarding what happens when you regarding accessories, spare parts, and tools. So, I think Angelina gave a very good example of you importing a product. She was talking about battery, but similarly, I can say an example of an earth mover. If you import an earth mover and you invoice the accessories of the earth mover at the time of export, then SEPA's benefits will be entitled to you. But if you invoice them separately, like for example, if it's an earth mover, it may have the tongs or whatever extra fittings I'm sure you know in the construction. So if all of them are invoiced at the same time of export, then you get the benefits of SEPA. But if you do it separately, then the question of rules of origin come and it will be treated as two different products. Now, last, of course, is what are the obligations of every exporter and what are the penalties? I'm sure you would like to know what happens when SEPA is very simple. You have a clear vision. If you are very true in explaining your rules of origin and you're always open to get the documents inspected, then SEPA will reward you with whatever percentage without any bottleneck. It's quite fast. But however, if not, you will be penalized by the competent authority of the exporting country. I can say for India, it'll be the Customs Authority and it can be the Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act. So false SEPA claims will be penalized. But otherwise, if an exporter is open to show his books and his authorities, then and prove his rules of origin, I think SEPA would be a very beneficial legislation. So now I have just taken certain important legal frameworks and how in depth CEPA has gone. And I'm sure you are all curious. We've heard everything about CEPA. We've heard the examples, but how is the customs procedure in CEPA? I think my friend Shweta is going to throw some light on that, purely how the rules of origin are. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Here we have seen how SEPA redesigns the road. My job here is to explain the traffic rules on that road in order to understand who actually gets benefited from SEPA. The most fundamental question in any free trade agreement is that whose goods are these really? For example, if I take a raw material from China and label it in Mumbai and call it an Indian product, I get a zero benefits under SEPA? Answer is no. This is why SEPA has something called as rules of origin. SEPA basically says if a, in order for a product to be qualified under rules of origin, it qualifies in two ways. First is wholly obtained or produced. These are products that are completely obtained or produced in one country without the use of any foreign material. For example, if we take the crops grown in Indian farms, fishes caught by Indian vessels, minerals mined in India, these are clearly an Indian product. Now, moving on to the second way, that is sufficient work or production. This applies to the products which contains imported, sorry, hello? Thank you. Now, moving on to the second one, that is sufficient work for production. So, when the class same product anymore. Here, the real manufacturing has happened in India. Here, SEPA treats this final product as Indian origins. Now, okay. Now, moving on to de minimis doctrine. That is, in simple terms, if the foreign content in any product is very small, that is less than 10% of the export value, product can still qualify as Indian origin. SIPA understands this, that in real world manufacturing, it is almost impossible for every tiny component to come from one country alone. For example, imagine an Indian company manufacturing electric mixers for export to Oman. Almost everything is made in India, but maybe a small imported electronic chip that is worth of 80 rupees comes from China or any other country. Now here, and the FOB value of the mixer could be 2000 rupees. Now here, 80 rupees is much less than 10% of the FOB value. Here, SEPA, under SEPA, the small imported component is acceptable. Here, the product still gets an Indian origin status and can enjoy the benefits of SEPA. Now, SEPA also looks at the other side of the picture because if there were no restrictions, the agreement could be misused very easily. Now, moving on to minimal or insufficient operation. Some activities are considered to be too small or minimal to be counted as real manufacturing. SEPA lists out several operations that do not count as sufficient transformation. For example, simple packaging, labeling, sorting, cleaning, diluting, applying preservatives. These cosmetic changes do not make a product Indian. This is SEPA closing the loopholes before they are being exploited. I'll give you an example. Suppose a trader imports ready made chocolates from one country and removes its original wrapper and puts into new boxes in India and tries to export the same to Oman, claiming an Indian origin. Here, CEPA will not allow this. Merely changing the package or label does not make the chocolate an Indian product. Now, moving on to proof of origin or reimbursement. Now, till now, we have established that your goods qualify under the rule of origin. But how do you prove it? That is done through the certificate of origin. It can be in printed or in electronic form. And certificate of origin acts as the passport to the zero duty treatment. And without this document, customs authority may refuse CEPA benefits to your goods. And even if your product is completely eligible for the same. For example, see, suppose an Indian textile exporter sends garments to Oman and wants to avail zero customs duty under CEPA. Along with the shipping document, the exporter must submit the certificate of origin. But without this certificate, Omani customs may treat your goods as ordinary imports and charge full customs from you. So no matter how eligible your goods or product is, without the certificate of origin, the CEPA benefits will not be given to you. Now, moving on to direct consignment. In order to claim benefits under CEPA, your goods must travel directly between India and Oman. But if they transit through a third country, they must not enter a trade or consumption stream of another country. Transshipment through a third country port with the seal maintained by customs is permissible under CEPA. For example, an Indian exporter may send machinery to Oman through port of Dubai because there is no direct shipping route. This is perfectly acceptable under CEPA, provided the goods remain sealed and under the supervision of the customs and are not opened for commercial use in Dubai. But if the goods are opened, yeah, but if the goods are opened, repackaged, or sold, the CEPA benefits may be lost. So, maintaining a proper transit documentation becomes very important here. And here is a protection that you really need to know. If an importer has already paid duties on goods that should have qualified under preferential rates under CEPA, they can claim a refund. Duties paid in excess are reimbursable and guarantees provided as security for imported goods are released. So here, if you have already been trading between India and Oman and you have paid duties that you shouldn't have, CEPA retrospectively protects you. For example, an Omani importer purchases ceramic products from India. And at that time, since the certificate of origin was not available, the importer had to pay the complete customs duty. Later, the importer submits the certificate of origin. Here, after submitting the certificate of origin, product was eligible under CEPA, and the extra duty which the exporter had to pay was refunded to him. Now, now moving on to one of the important chapter, that is customs procedures and trade facilitation. Here, CEPA focuses heavily on making trade faster and smoother. Let me walk you through certain key mechanisms. First one is single window system. Previously, an importer might need to submit lot of documents, same documents to lot of agencies like port agencies, health authority, and multiple other agencies separately. The single window system eliminates this. Here, one submission, one portal, and all agencies receive the data simultaneously. For companies managing dozens of shipments a month, This is not a minor convenience, it is a structural efficiency gain. Moving on to pre arrival processing. Here, you can submit your import documentation before your shipment arrives. This means customs clearance processing begins while your ships are at sea or at transit. By the time your vessels docks, your clearance may be already be ready. For industries dealing with perishable goods like food, pharma, fresh produce, this acts like a game changer. Now, moving on to advanced ruling. So, what happens here? If you're planning to import a product, you can directly ask customs, does my product qualify as originating? What classification does it fall under? You get a binding answer from customs before you ship. So, this eliminates the risk of nasty surprises at the border. Advance ruling is binding on the customs authority and not on other traders. So, here your investment is protected. Now, moving on to inquiry points. CEPA mandates the establishment of inquiry points. If your shipment is held up, if there is a classification dispute, or if you need any clarity on the procedures, there is now a designated point of contact. This is CEPA building accountability into system. Moving on to authorized economic operator status. AEO program is CEPA's trusted trade lane. Businesses with strong record of compliance, financial stability, and operational reliability can apply for AEO status. Once they are granted, they receive expedited processing, fewer physical inspections, priority clearance, reduced documentation burden, etc. For high volume traders, this status is worth pursuing. Now, moving on to customs review and appeal. If a customs decision goes against you, SEPA guarantees you the right to administrative review. Here you can appeal to the customs administration itself. If if that fails, there is judicial review that is available to you. Here, it means that the system is not a black box. It is reviewable, challengeable, and accountable. Now, moving on to temporary admissions. So, professional equipments, scientific instruments, goods that are brought for exhibitions, all these products, etc., all can enter Oman temporarily without any customs duty, provided they are being re exported. For example, if an Indian company participates in a trade exhibition in Muscat and brings lot of demo products or technical equipments, these items can enter Oman duty free because they are here for only temporary purposes and not for sale. Moving on to duty free entry of commercial samples. If you want to test your product in Omani market, before committing to a full scale export, you can bring your samples, which is of small quantity or a negligible value. Those products will enter Oman duty free. Also, with your samples, you will have advertising materials, right? Those materials can also enter Oman duty free. I'll give an example. Imagine an Indian cosmetic company planning to launch their products in Omani market. Before making a major investment, the company may want to send some skincare samples products to distributors in Muscat. Under SEPA, these small samples can enter Oman without customs duty. Similarly, the brochures or the catalogs, promotional leaflets, all these materials can also enter Oman duty free. Now, moving on to goods returned after repair. If a product is sent back to India for repair or alteration and returned within 1 year, no customs duty applies regardless of the origin. For instance, suppose an industrial machine used in Oman develops a technical defect. It can be sent back to India and get it repaired in India. And once repaired, the machine can enter Oman without attracting any customs duty again. Now, moving on to SPS measures. Now, I want to especially address those of you in food, agriculture, healthcare, and pharmaceuticals. What are SPS measures? SPS measures mainly concerns with food safety, animal health, plant protection standards. It means that neither India nor Oman will use health and safety standards as disguised barrier to trade. Sanitary measures must be scientifically justified, proportionate, and applied uniformly. We can understand that here there is a bilateral recognition of equivalence. If India has a safety standard that achieves the same level of protection as that of Oman, Oman must accept it. This means that Indian food products certified under FSSAI can enter Oman without being retested. Now, moving on to the importance of EIC certificate, that is Export Inspection Council. For many products, Oman accepts the Indian government's EIC certificate directly, and this includes products like fish and seafood products, milk and dairy, eggs, honey, fruits and vegetables, etc. If I give you an example, suppose an Indian exporter wants to ship frozen shrimps to Oman. Earlier, the importer had to face a lot of inspections and additional certification requirements in Oman. But under CEPA, if the product has an EIC certificate, Oman's authorities are expected to accept it as a valid proof of compliance. Now, moving on to pharmaceuticals. Previously, an Indian pharmaceutical company would get its products certified under USFDA, EMA, UK MHRA, or TGA. Then, in order to sell it in Oman, they would need to go through Oman's own inspection and approval process again, which means double testing, double cost, double time. Here, CEPA eliminates this. Under CEPA, if a pharmaceutical product is already approved by USFDA, EMA, UK MHRA, or TGA, Oman accepts the certificate without requiring prior inspection. Under CEPA, Oman agrees that for certain eligible pharmaceutical products, the approval should be given within 90 days. Where the inspections are genuinely required, the target would be 270 working days. Now, moving on to TBT, that is technical barriers to trade. CEPA also brings major advantages. Sorry, CEPA ensures that Indian goods receive fair treatment. There will be no discriminatory technical barriers. There will be no different conformity tests for origin goods, which means that Oman cannot impose harsher testing or certification requirements simply because the product is from India. Now, CEPA also brings major advantages to pharmaceutical sector by simplifying regulatory requirements. One important part is recognition of internationally accepted standards like GPM or CGP, which are goods manufacturing practices and good clinical practices. Under CEPA, if an Indian pharmaceutical company Under CEPA, if pharmaceutical companies already have these internationally accepted certifications, Oman is more willing to accept it. Under CEPA, it also simplifies something called as stability testing, which means that earlier companies may have had to repeat separate testing procedures for Oman, even if similar tests were already conducted internationally. And finally, CEPA also aims to make pharmaceutical products pricing more practical and competitive according to the local market in Oman. This means that Indian pharma can price competitively for public and private hospitals in Oman. Here, we have now seen that how CEPA makes goods move better, faster, and more cheaply. But CEPA is not just an agreement, it is a comprehensive economic partnership, and that the word comprehensive means it reaches into services, healthcare, technology, innovation, and even how we resolve dispute when something goes wrong. Now, my colleague Angelina will now bring you the final chapter. Over to you, Angelina.
Thank you, Shweta. I opened with a story of a merchant crossing the Arabian Sea. Shweta explained how his goods would be certified, cleared, and delivered under CEPA. Now it's time to talk about something which does not go into the shipping containers, which is trade in services. Now, within the framework of CEPA itself, CEPA encourages the cross border trade in services between the two nations. Now, aligning with Oman's Vision 2040 and Viksit Bharat 2047, Oman, the CEPA, yeah. So back to my slide. So aligning with Oman's Vision 2040 and Viksit Bharat 2047, what CEPA wants to move forward is a collaboration in the field of medical healthcare. Now, when it comes to this collaboration, there is a push for the facilitation of traditional Indian medicine like Ayurveda, Unani, Rikpasova. Under the facilitation of trade, there is a mutual, in trade and services, there is a mutual recognition of the education qualification and experiences of individuals in the field of medicine, physiotherapy, midwifery, and nursing. In today's event, I had a conversation with a gentleman who asked about his query about the anti-dumping measures under the CEPA regime. So, whenever there is any free trade agreement, when we are talking about free trade agreement, what happens? The import duty comes down. What it creates an influx of the foreign products in the domestic market. And sometimes the imported products are in direct competition with the domestic product. And sometimes it also causes serious injury to the domestic market. So, if such serious injury happens because of the reduction in tariff, is there any measure under CEPA? Yes, there is. And that is the anti dumping safeguards. So, under CEPA, when there is a serious injury detected when it comes to a domestic market, then the nations can stop the reduction in tariff. However, this stoppage elimination cannot be indefinite, which means it cannot be extended after a certain period of time. The time is capped. Now, coming to MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises. So, when it comes to a lot of free trade agreement, something underappreciated happens with respect to MSMEs. However, CEPA makes it's one of the aims to promote MSME growth and cooperation between these two countries. Now, how does it happen? With respect to these MSMEs, there is the talk of establishing and creation of committee on MSMEs. There is also a push for establishing incubators, accelerators, export assistance centers exclusively for MSME. An international network is envisaged for sharing best practices. Now, coming to the corporations ecosystem. Now, as we have been at length discussing about the cooperation between the two nations, these sectors are enumerated on the slide for which the cooperation will happen. We start with mining and minerals, second, pharma, healthcare, digital trade, space and technology, tourism, logistic, defense manufacturing, and innovation and trade. Now, let me take one example where cooperation is intended between the two nations. Let's take the example of education. Now, India is one of the playing ground of premier educational institute and the branches alike. For example, we have Amity, Manipal, Symbiosis, ISB, Hyderabad. So when it comes to these premier institutions, they have their branches out in other GCC countries, in UAE, Australia, Singapore, elsewhere. Now, Oman also boasts one of the largest population of the Indian expatriates. However, we don't see when it comes to the establishment of these premier education institute in India, from India to Oman. So CEPA also creates a framework for establishing more premier educational institutes. Now, what happens when something goes wrong? When there is, say, a confusion with respect to the interpretation of the terms within the framework of CEPA. Now, over to the screen, there is a three-step mechanism for resolving disputes or disagreement with respect to the termination, with respect to what a certain term should mean. So, step one is the consultation between the two countries. And what happens if the consultation fails? It is mediation. And what happens when mediation fails? Ending with formal arbitration proceedings. We have covered a lot of ground today. 60 minutes to cover what took 2 years to negotiate and 5,000 years of trust. But before I close, I want you to leave with something practical. Because a seminar that ends without a call of action is just expensive coffee evening. 5,000 years ago, a merchant set sail from the coast of India with a handful of black pepper, cotton, and a prayer. He did not know if his cargo will reach his destination or if his customers will pay him for his cargo. Today, you have something that the merchant never had. You have a legal certainty in the form of CEPA. You have tariff commitments, you have custom infrastructure, you have dispute resolution, you have mutual recognition. The question is not whether SEPA creates opportunity. Question is, are you ready to use it? With this, I thank you for your time, attention, and trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelina. It was again elaborate and I think more insightful. So, as you're all aware, we were supposed to be joined. We are joined already by our Excellency Ambassador to India online. He's there with us. So he would like to address it. But before we would like to take some questions from you. And regarding the questions, let's tell you first itself. We'll take bail as lawyers. We always give you a disclaimer. Tell you what is the best we know in the agreement. For the technical side, we'll try our best to answer it. If not, we'll get back to you. We have your details. So the floor is open for any relevant questions.
Before asking any questions, first of all, thank you so much for the excellent presentation. A treaty which is running into several hundred pages, and you illustrated in a few slides, and the insight has been so deep and understanding.
Well,
And your presentation has been appreciable.
thank you. Thank you.
I have one or two suggestions. One is medical tourism. She mentioned this is a part of the trade agreement there to encourage and develop. Now, there are so many patients going abroad for or under the medical tourism itinerary, and they are going worldwide. Now, India is definitely one of the destinations, but then there are certain um, not I don't say in unencouraging, but there are certain things which can be done. One is the visa regulations, and more so the visa fee. It is highest in India. The other countries are trying to attract in Omani people by offering so many concessions and attractions. India is keeping a sort of higher level of fee will be a discouragement, one of the discouragements for not attracting people or discouraging people. So under CEPA, if something can be done, applied for, can be applied to reduce or eliminate the fee will be a further boost of a relationship in the healthcare industry.
So, thank you for your question. In fact, CEPA has gone into depth regarding medical tourism, and there is an entire chapter talking about how to promote Omani patients coming to India or taking two types of treatment. One is for proper diseases, and one is for holistic treatment of Ayurveda and all that. So there is a chapter which gives you clear duty. There are some benefits. If you ask me, I cannot give you the exact offhand. I can just get back to you. Have it. There is something very clearly which is taking into consideration.
Yeah. My suggestion is that try to eliminate or reduce the fee.
Very
Very simple.
yes.
If it can be applied under CEPA, that would be an ideal thing. Second thing is, again, one more thing.
Yes.
You mentioned so much about the Indian pharmaceutical industry
Yes.
and its potential to export worldwide. It is acceptable and it is exported worldwide. But when it comes to Oman, the Indian medical products are less represented, or the share in the market is much less compared to all the other exporting companies, countries' products. Yeah. Okay. So under CEPA, again, the pharmaceutical industry can take an emphatic action to increase the volume. Especially now, you mentioned that there are no more double testing. And one thing that has been preventing the volume has been the double testing. And very often the Indian products doesn't get through compared to the European products. Now the testing is no more. So this could take a big boost in the volume and share in this market.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you for your question. Regarding this, I can answer this question because, as you're aware, CEPA has gone into depth, and India is a bigger pharma country only compared to Oman, compared to both, taking both countries into perspective. And because there is a lot of relation between the two countries in the field of medicine, we've been exchanging services. A lot of our doctors are here, most of a good representation in the hospitals. So government has taken a very in-depth view in this, and they have now brought in very serious, they are doing a massive push to not only push the products initially, and to ensure that there is a post-market surveillance also, to ensure that they reach the final customer, final patient, or whoever is the user, and the effectiveness of the medicine is also perfect. So, and that does not end with just dumping and just taking surveillance. They're ensuring that this constant exchange of information is there, and they've also ensured the tariffs are also lesser for this. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi. Um,
Yes, yes,
yeah, I'm Mohammed Sawad, representing the company Soulfire.
yes.
So, as a importer for the fresh produce, especially in food sector,
San.
so how does SEPA positively affect us as an importer and a distributor in Oman?
I think that's a very vital question. And in this sector alone, CEPA has brought in a very vital aspect of reducing double testing. If you are importing a product, now CEPA is between India and Oman. So if you are into importing goods from India, you do not need to double test it in Oman. Earlier, you had to, because the standards, standards are different in Oman and India, and accreditation agencies are also different. And it takes a lot of time. Of course, you can't blame the governments, and it always takes time in both the countries because of their own methods and standards. So now CEPA has given a real good clarity, stating that for sanitary and phytosanitary measures, you will be given a clear, if you have recognition from an accredited laboratory of the country from which you're importing it, that would more than suffice use the products in India. There is a clarity on that. So you do not have to come back to Oman and test it. And this is which are those goods are also being clarified in the CEPA, in the definition of goods.
So, how about the import duties
It has been reduced from 0 to 5. I'm sorry, 5 to 0.
for like all the food products, you mean?
Not all the food products. That has to be defined. My Angelina will.
With respect to that question, the products which get the benefit are listed in the HS series, harmonized series from chapter 1 to 97 in the CEPA itself. So, with respect to that is the answer to the question. The number of goods and the type of goods that would be accepted. So, if in case of any query, we can always get back to the chapters.
Could you please share that after the meeting?
Surely, surely.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, sir. Yes, please.
I myself Harris from Al Karama Group. See, actually, this benefit for Indian origin product, right?
Yes.
So then who is certifying it is an Indian origin only? Why? Because no, in the presentation it is shown that no assembled product is not treated as Indian product, right?
Yes, sir. Assembled products are that there is to get a CEPA benefit. CEPA is very clear that it is between India and Oman. So if it's an Indian product and if it's invoiced at the time of importing together, then you get the benefit. Am I answering it correctly?
No. My question is that who is certifying that it is a fully an Indian product? Is it like that?
You certifying the rule, the origin of the product. That is your question, right, sir?
Yeah. Who?
It is, see, rules of origin have been defined. Yes, exactly, sir. Rules of origin have already been defined in goods, which are the goods which are certified, and it's a harmonized system for that. There's chapter 1 to 97. I'm again saying, and when I just push this chapter 1 to 97, it is 1,259 document,
Okay.
and it's got a clarity on every single product as to what it is today, what it was before CEPA, and that clarity is there.
Okay,
And
thank you.
regarding the origin also is defined,
Okay.
how
Thank you.
it can be determined.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
My name is Ajit.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. My name is Ajit. I'm
Yes.
from Welding Shipping.
Yes.
If from India to Oman, normally it takes 3 to 5 days.
Yes.
If it goes through the bank, it will take 7 days. So when you do through SEPA, there is any seal or any documentation, where SEPA is, this is through SEPA, so that here instruction will not be there and you can pass the document correctly. Because when the import has been done from India, the ships take 3 to 5 days. If it is via Dubai, it's take 5 days. If it is direct, 3 days. So the documents coming through the bank, it is take more than 5 to 7 days. So if it is SEPA and we can apply immediately, so there is any letter where SEPA, this is through SEPA, you can apply here like that, anything Indian government is giving or from the chamber?
I'm sure there is. I can get back to you on that because I've gone through that. Because CEPA is actually streamlining the industry and all these kind of documentation. In clearing and forwarding, there is a clear chapter which mentions about that. We can get back to you on this.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Suresh. I am from the tiles industry.
Yes.
I think, thank you very much for the presentation. I don't want to repeat what the gentleman has already said. And also your colleague was mentioning about the anti-dumping countervailing
On tiles.
tariffs.
Yeah.
So she mentioned that it will be applied for a period of time. Is there any time frame that has been defined in the CEPA, or is it open-ended, or how is it being addressed?
There is a time frame in CEPA. I cannot recall it right now, but I can always get back to it. There is, I guess, it is a 270 days period after which they cannot be extended for the same product. In CEPA, there is a chapter on anti-dumping measures on CEPA itself because the two nations have carefully studied and has realized that when it comes to a reduction in tariff, there would obviously some domestic industry be suffering with serious injury. So after identifying that, there would be a certain period which is already defined under the chapter. If that answers the question.
Yeah, just to add on to that. See, there are certain anti-dumping duties which has been imposed by the GCC Council. Okay, which means all the GCC countries are imposing anti-dumping. Okay, on such instances, or how is that being addressed? Because that is going to be for a period of time which is already decided by the GCC Council as such. So will that be to the period of the GCC Council's decision, or is there going to be any different understanding between between Oman and India under CEPA?
Very good question. Well, this is something that the two countries have to decide between each other. It's also one of the things upon legal interpretation, because what we have in SEPA is a bilateral free trade agreement only between Oman and India. So will it overlap over the other GCC anti-dumping measures? It's something for the two nations to decide. Policy decision, basically.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Yes, I'm Naushad from PGS Group.
Yes, sir.
Actually, currently the shipments are coming from India. The certificate of origin issued by the respective state chamber of commerce.
Yes.
So in the SEFA, the certificate of origin is issued by the special authority or the same chamber of commerce to get the duty-free facility in Oman.
It is, Shweta, can you answer that? Can you answer? Okay. My colleague who dealt with the chapter tells me it's the Chamber of Commerce itself.
The same.
The
correct?
same, the same.
Okay, thank you.
They're the only facilitation body. If we're done with questions, I think we can leave the floor open for the ambassador to make the address. Yes, we're also expecting someone from the Ministry of Commerce to also join. Yes.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Is there anyone representing Ministry of Commerce India on the WebEx? Is there anyone? So I think now you can ask the master. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening, Karan. Thank you very much for holding the charge there along with our senior colleague Pradeep Kumar for this very important India-Oman Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement related yet another roadshow. But there have been many positive novelties today which I would like to comment on. But I'm just trying to see before that if I can just give me a second. Just 1 second. Okay, what I'm trying to do here is that the many questions were asked. I'm just trying to see whether I can post a sample of what is possible via the chat box, but be as it may. Let me come back. Sorry for this little attempt, but let me explain to you what I had in my mind. First of all, good evening to everyone, and to this very excellent presentation made by Sharan, Shweta, and Angelina. And I must really compliment them for having gone through these 1,250 pages long document of CEPA and articulating, demystifying the entire otherwise code-looking and tables to something which was much more kinder with illustrations and pictographic representations. So congratulations to you on that count. And let me also say that even though I began thinking it would be very simplistic presentation, but as the presentations progressed, we could see that they really dug through the entire document and came out with something which is very, very directly relevant brass tacks issues, which are the ones which the trade bodies will require, were all covered by them. The point which has already been mentioned interestingly in the CEPA is about this US FDA, EMA, UK MHRA, TGA. related certifications would make Indian farmers also to be accepted in Oman is really a very important thing. Perhaps our share in the pharmaceutical market in Oman will go on the back of this. The rules of origin explanation, which I understood, is that 10% is the maximum tolerance that they have to some foreign components. But I thought that was very harsh kind of rules of origin under CEPA. But I'm not commenting it because I do not have the access to the ROO or the analysis of it. But if 10% is acceptable to community, fair enough. Generally, I have been hearing elsewhere 30% is what they allow the foreign component, so long as it is. But the rules of origin also change, so we'll have to go through the document to find out exactly what is the rules of origin for the various product lines. The regarding the visa fee, etc., whether there will be some kind of facilitation for the visa, whether the shipping lines being faster than the banking channels, any kind of trade facilitation coming up as part of CEPA, all these questions need to be answers to these questions need to be found by going through the document. The document as of now, which we have, the official one, of course, is a PDF one, which I find to be very difficult to go through. So I'm with the Ministry of Commerce asking them to help us out by sending us the soft text version of it. I do have one soft text version from the premier body in India, what we call a Center for Trade and Investment Law, which itself is what a body within Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, itself in the Ministry of Commerce. But yet, I don't want to unnecessarily upload something which is not authenticated by our Ministry of Commerce. Once that happens, you'll be able to go through it. But the series of presentations which were held in the past, we have uploaded all of them. And if Sharan and his team also permit today, their PowerPoint presentations will also upload on our portal. And with the power of technology, we are trying to bring the nuggets of wisdom, whatever we understood from the various presentations, to the reaches of everyone. An example of that I will tell you. As I was listening to the questions, I was querying our RAG portal. Incidentally, the RAG portal, RAG is retrieval augmented generation, something like chatbot, but not like hallucinated with the general information, but whatever has come to the notice of embassy through presentations, etc. That is the information base against which the answers are pulled out. But we do add that caveat that given that it's an AI kind of answer, so double check or get it vetted before you act on them. So with that kind of caveat, when I ask those questions, you will see that great answers come out. I mean, I can't guarantee that they're all the correct answer, but at least it will make you wiser. It will guide you to the real document and try to find out the real information which you're requiring. So I'm just like any support for visa or work permit under CEPA. The answer which I get through this technology based on the information which we got or the representations made by the various experts in the past, it says that yes, CEPA includes significant provisions for supporting visa and work permit purposes. But of course, you have to understand what it basically means, like enhanced mobility provisions for professionals, contractual service suppliers can stay up to 4 years, business visitors up to 90 days, independent professionals up to 180 days, increased intra-corporate transferee ceiling also has been enhanced, first ever professional category commitment, support for Indian businesses in Oman. So answers of this nature come. Then to the questions of fresh fruits and vegetables, what kind of tariff structure, it gives the whole detail of 5% having been brought down to 0%, generally what was already mentioned by Angelina, I think, and also by Shweta. It says that examples of fresh fruits like cherries, apricots, prunes, apples, tamarind, pears, mixtures of nuts and dried fruits, peeled citrus fruits, all of them go to 0% tariff duty. Similarly, the huge list is there. Overall concessions. Am I audible or something is coming? 1 second. Okay, I'm also happy that someone from the Ministry of Commerce has joined. I don't know how much of the questions they will have heard. Ministry of Commerce, if you heard the questions, maybe you will be able to answer. Otherwise, I don't know. But anyway, we'll give the floor to you in the end to make some comments from your side. But continuing on, the other question was the rules of origin and who issues a certificate. I think this is the part of the process on which we are undertaking on the two sides, both Oman and India, which is why we are yet to get to the date of entry into force of the entire CEPA. ambition being on the two sides 1st of June. So one of those elements besides the customs and the procedures and documentation would be also identifying who is the authority. What I understand from this is that both sides will identify the issuing authority. India will its and then the Oman will do its own. So maybe Chamber of Commerce, somebody will be given. Typically, one Apex Chamber of Commerce is given, I think, the certificate of origin issuing authority. But we'll get to know that it is not there beyond that. But it does say that CEPA will have this certificate issued by an authority identified by the two sides. But which authority is not mentioned here. But that will come, I think, a little later. The question of trade facilitation, given that banks take more time than the shipping lines to deliver the products, etc., typically cover this discrepancy. But I mean, again, as I said to you, this is more based on the the technologically powered portal pulling out the information. I have not gone through the entire CEPA document. Ministry of Commerce may be able to answer that, or you yourself can dig through the document once it is made available. The PDF version is already available on our portal and also on the portal of Ministry of Commerce, which is also available. You can go through and find out. But meanwhile, in one quick few seconds, the answer which I get is that CEPA does not cover this discrepancy of banks taking more time than the shipping lines to deliver the products, and how do you really handle that little bit of extra 2-3 days. But they say that trade facilitation support includes single window systems, pre-arrival processing, advanced rulings. So an allusion to that was already made by, I think, Shweta or Angelina. Authorized economic operator program, expedited clearance for perishables and air cargo, customs and indirect cooperation, digital platforms. Then anti-dumping of GCC versus CEPA. So here again, it gives some kind of answer. GCC's role in anti-dumping is known to us, and CEPA's stance on trade remedies. There's also their rights and obligations and WTO agreements, definitions, lesser duty rule, transparency. There's a huge technical output of here. But the anxiety of CEPA is that CEPA should not become. I mean, of course, this anti-dumping is known that when they start selling below their actual cost of production and flooding the market, and the country gets paid, they impose these duties. I don't know how CEPA will be handling it. But be as it may, now through Karan and otherwise, let's give the floor to the Ministry of Commerce. Who is there from the Ministry of Commerce? Who has joined here? Can you
Mr.
speak, please? Yeah.
Mr. Vikash Kumar.
Bol.
May I
Haan,
Mr.
Vikas Kumar.
Vikash,
What is Vikas Kumar, Karan? What is he in there in the ministry?
he's in Department of
Acha, he's
Commerce.
writing here. No, he is writing here. I am Vikas Kumar from the Department of Commerce and I have been directed to participate. He has not given the designation. Vikas, क्या designation है आपका? Unmute करके बताइए. Young professional. So young professional, can you answer any of the questions which people ask? Vikas? He's not even unmuting. So I guess we have come to the end of this session. He is not able to answer. He's too young. See, he says he's not able to unmute. कैसे चलेगा विकास? You are representing Ministry of Commerce. You can't unmute yourself. Everybody else is doing it here. गलत है ना? चलिए, कोई बात नहीं, आपने सुन लिया, जवाब दे दीजिएगा बाद में. We did have a representative, but I think he has technical difficulty to unmute, and he is too young a professional to be perhaps responding, I believe. And therefore we'll have to refer these queries separately or directly dig through the entire documentation. With that, we end from here and we get back to you, Karan, to, I think, conclude or something like that. Thank you once again. Compliments to you, the presenters. Very good dynamic presence there I see in the hall. It has become a hybrid mode. I'm glad that this session will reach many people, and your pictographic presentations, which you really presented, very, very cheerful, to be very frank, to my mind. Trade, which is otherwise a very, has suddenly been demystified into the nature of putting some kind of pictographic presentations. And also you had added the seriousness to the entire presentations. All in all, a great job done by you. Congratulations. Allow us to use your PowerPoints to add to our portal, and your details also. Anything else will also add to the portal. Thank you very much. Bye-bye from my side. Back to you.
I think, sir, maybe he can be invited for the concluding remarks.
I'd like to invite Pradeep Kumar, sir, please, to have a few words.
I just wish to thank you, all the participants who have come here today, particularly MTS legal team, which has come all the way from India and demystified various provisions of CEPA. In the days to come, when we are going to, this CEPA is going to be implemented in the days to come, uh, as we go along, many more mysteries will be solved, and we hope, in fact, we are confident that very soon CEPA is going to help us in increasing the trade between our two countries multifold. Once again, on behalf of Indian Embassy, I wish to thank you all who have come here today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello. Hi.